Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Brick Lounge. My name's Daniel. I'm a solutions architect based in Australia. And on the podcast today, we have Audrey Stone. So let's see who else is here.
Yeah, awesome. My name is Nina Williams. Really excited to be here today. We have a full fun house of some of my favorite people. I personally am a solutions architect here at Databricks. I support the startup segment and really excited to have Audrey and Randy join us. Audrey, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. So, Audrey Stone, based in New York. I'm a bit of a bi-coastal kid, grew up in the Bay Area and also out here on the East Coast. So, I have a nice mix of experience. And then I would say my fun fact about me, if you have been with any of my opening pitches, I always start with a story about my mini pony, Stanley Tucci. You have to keep it light and lively.
Hey everyone, my name's Randy. I work at Databricks now, and due to some creative contracting early on with Audrey, she's not allowed to do marketing events without me. I have to be on the mic. I have to talk also. And I do not have a mini pony, but I found it fascinating to learn about Audrey's mini pony and the history of mini ponies. Believe it or not, they're not a naturally occurring phenomenon. We didn't find them, we created them as a people.
Wait, you legit have a mini pony in New York? Where? Like in your apartment?
Yeah, in my backyard, no. Up at a farm in Westchester, so like an hour outside the city. But you learn so much about humankind through these animals.
Interesting. How often do you visit the pony?
Like once a week, it's a hobby, a lawn ornament. But I tend to take really good content of him and I use it into some of the saturated emotion that I think a lot of our executives feel when we try and pitch them. It's not their first AI pitch or data pitch, and there's saturation sentiment. So we have to keep it lively and interesting.
Love that. So Audrey, you have like a super unique background, like in the ad tech space. I know you were at Google for a long time. We're super lucky to have you here at Databricks. Can you just tell us a little bit about your journey, like how you got into the ad tech space? Teach us a little bit about the industry, because I mean, I don't know anything about ad tech. So I was just kind of curious.
For sure. So I started at Google in 2019. And we were selling machine learning models before we even knew what that would become, especially as a non-engineer on the sales side in the ads business. And I joined that business after 3 years in consulting, learning data architecture just by experience. But when I came over to the ads business, the platforms were moving away from a cost per click model. So every time you would click on an ad in search, an advertiser would pay a certain amount of cents. And the industry was moving towards more value-based modeling. And we would work with our advertisers, specifically within the e-commerce space, to understand their ROI metrics and how to do some of the data pipelining back to the platform and essentially feed those models to be more performant and effective to cogs that they needed to hit within their leadership team. So we were selling media, but we were also very much selling performance and data KPIs. And that slowly transcended the platform into becoming more and more focused on like what levers would we let advertisers pull? How much control do you let into an ML-based platform for a non-technical user? And what I like to share with people is ad tech and banking are probably the longest standing form of machine learning application. Think about like hedge funds, for example. When we were moving towards trying to describe what AI would mean to a marketer's experience, we would fumble, but the reality is AI was birthed, like the value of things like knowledge graphs and search, and those core functions were birthed from a lot of the ad tech type dynamics that would happen on the back end of delivering campaigns and platform economics. So I ended up moving more towards a quant role within Google Ads, which is where I became a BigQuery power user within my customers' experiences.
And what's a quant? What's a quant do?
Like a quantitative seller. So we would run data science light models for advertisers to evaluate their total ROI on their investment, whether it be with Google or other platforms. And we would become embedded within the success of marketing in a brand's decision with their finance organizations or their data science teams, just to understand different methodologies that could prove value. And what I like to describe is when you see a billboard on a highway that view or impression or traffic is so different than if you watch a YouTube ad and you click through and have a highly conversion oriented experience.
And okay, interesting. So, I mean, I just wasn't like super familiar with that space here because I felt like Google dominated it.
So the way you should look at ad tech is actually not where ads are placed, but where the surface of consumption can happen. So think like your cell phone versus your website. And within a web experience, Google's not the only player. I think they have such a brand oriented with search, like Google it as a verb. And there's so much pride around that. But there's so many different invisible players that make the data economy within ad tech highly complicated. So think like Android devices, iOS devices. Some people are on Safari, some people are on Firefox, and some people are on Chrome. And all of those have different regulatory limitations that have to be responded to based on what certain digital acts describe that you can do with information. Google's a major player, but then you think like Apple has MacBooks and Apple has iPhones and Google has Chrome, but it also has YouTube. And so there's risk of monopoly in the amount of surface control that any ad tech platform can consume. But at the same time, like they're not the only player. And you think like so much of your social consumption and your inspiration happens on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, anything that's more creative. So the journey becomes even more convoluted depending on if a user is browsing for personal purpose or browsing for corporate.
So do we focus mostly on the analytics side of like the ad tech data? Like, are we housing like all that data and just doing all the analytics and providing the insight? Or do we actually like, what do we do?
For us here within our ad tech sector, it's a variety of ad tech providers, agencies that will buy, sell media on those inventory sources, and then as well as a bunch of subsidiaries and spaces like digital identity. Another example would be like rewarding and coupon. Randy and I have one of those. Then maybe a third could be like the next series of platforms that are coming up in the industry. So think about like gaming, for example. Gaming is super popular, but now there's like hybrid inventory types that are between a classic ad campaign that is running digitally, but maybe an even more logged in user experience. And so we have some of those in our portfolio. What you'll see though, I think in today's industry is the amount of saturation. Very few brands are actually doing anything creative. And I think part of it is the smaller the ad platform, the better the models that they can produce. An example we have is AppLovin, which is a customer we prospect pretty heavily. And they're known for having like incremental bidding and reporting capabilities. And that's very unique within the industry because the larger ad tech platforms can't prove incrementality at the time of purchase.
Why not? Why don't they just do it though?
They can't get statistical significance. And it's been a discussion for a really long time of like, how much control do you want to curate? Like, because Google, Meta, Apple, they have such responsibility to the industry with their ad footprint, their device, and then their surfaces. There is a notion of like, how much is too much? And is that a level of control they're willing to give an advertiser, a marketer, or whoever's an intermediary in the buying process? But what we do see is these smaller players like up and coming that are doing really creative things and having great moments in the market. The verb adjective, who cares, that we're thinking about when we talk to our advertisers is how we grow a marketer's budget. So marketers only have so much money to spend on media. How much is each ad tech company consuming of that available budget? And that's what we call the share of wallet. And I think that lesson is actually really transferable to the cloud space when we think about like how much cloud dollars can go to Databricks versus maybe a peer of ours or a competitor, however you see it. But the share of wallet is emphasis on the share, which means sometimes you can live alongside your competition without being fully dominated. And I think that there's a healthy exchange there around not always assuming, especially in ad tech, that you're going to consume 100% of someone's dollars. That's unrealistic. Whereas in like cloud sales, I think we like to go for it.
Why is that unrealistic? Because like if I'm going to get strapped in like cloud. I'm AWS. Yeah, unless I have a forcing reason, like I gotta have a presence in Azure or somewhere else. Like I'm gonna go all in on AWS. I'm gonna get better rates. I'm gonna get locked in and get the benefits of doing that. Why wouldn't I want the same thing on the other side?
Yeah, and ad space, it's fear and dependency of your demand being solely in one channel. And you'll see cases like Meta had an instance during the pandemic where here's actually a very interesting topic in the ad tech space that I'll share is what is the right level of freedom of speech? And during the pandemic, there was an uprising of hate speech, anti-Semitism, as also the Black Lives Matter and how much you would let user-generated content infiltrate topics that are relatively sensitive and what level of can the platform regulate what user-generated content is created, whether it's put down, banned, or let alone surfaceable in a discovery type feed where a user is learning. And we experience instances where brands didn't want to be associated spending money on a platform that couldn't regulate the traffic within a positive mindset or landscape because it can be damaging to the counter argument, of course. And that always pops up around things like presidential races, local election, where there's so much UGC oriented potentially slander. There's so much campaigning and what's the right level of audience at all.
So Audrey, just curious, like you've been in this space a while, and you've seen a lot of different things in ad tech for the many years. What are like the biggest changes that, you've seen just recently with like the big AI boom and like what are you, expecting to see in the next, year or two, like big changes to come?
I actually wouldn't say it's a change, but it's a learn from. In the ad tech space, when the bidding mechanisms were evolving to different types of KPIs that a brand would care about, most commonly we talk about return on ad spend. These brands really taught, and platforms vice versa, the value of what a business KPI means. And that required the marketer to work with finance or accounting to have true understanding of what an investment dollar would generate on our platform. And that mindset around like dollar in X amount and helping the non-technical user understand and calculate that return. To me, that is the foundation of business value selling that I think we aspire to have within cloud. But when we act like it's so hard to do, it's like actually marketers have been showing us how to do this for so long because clickstream analytics was fully tailored to whichever success metric they needed to see on their top or bottom line, regardless of what they were choosing. And in some cases, like I had brands that if they couldn't get their metrics right, it was life or death. And that was businesses going into bankruptcy, like think really seasonal businesses with low margins, like anything around holidays, Halloween, candy, like high volume, low margin.
I mean, it must be super hard to forecast and predict like, what the ROI would be on like a certain ad campaign. I'm guessing it's similar to like, okay, if I invest this much in, the stock market, I'm expecting a 10% return, but like, am I going to get it? Like how accurate is that usually?
As a newcomer into this space, it is so much dumber than that. We're not even talking about predicting it. We're talking about telling them what it was after it happened. Like that's the bar from my read. That's where a lot of conversations come up is how do I know that I put $1 into this campaign? And I can see I got $18 out. And you think, hell yeah, 1 in, 18 out. How much of that 18 were you going to get without putting the dollar in? Some of that, you might have gotten that anyway, that billboard up on the highway, which we all love. I might have been stopping to get coffee anyway, so it didn't need to be there. So that, for me coming in, I thought it was going to be way more about how do I save money on my ad spend, get the same results with less money. And immediately they're like, I would like to spend a lot more money. Please find places to put my money so I can get more sales. And then prove that they're worth what I think they're worth.
Yeah, the proving part is where I think we have endless meat on the bone to help our customers here anywhere candidly, because attribution is so challenging. But to your point, like and this is where digital ad buying became so sexy compared to like the madman view of print media, for example, is the platforms won't spend if it can't hit your threshold of ROI at a certain velocity and consistency. So there's actually some levels of guarantee. And that puts the marketer more closely aligned to a CFO type reporting chain, because you can come to them and say, like, this is the amount of dollars they spend and this is the amount of demand we predict based on historical search traffic. A lot of the user experience in these platforms is assistive with the planning process. So when we talk, like right now, we're really hot on the agentic experience in buying. A lot of that does exist. It's just at varying levels across each platform. And now the expectation is I need help deciding platform A, B, or C, not within the platform itself. But to Randy's point earlier, like a lot of the conversations we have is making sure the output that an advertiser spends with them is as attributable as possible. And that is an ongoing challenge, especially with things like now users. And I like to say your kids are like the best prompt tuners. If you have kids that are like querying on ChatGPT, Perplexity, Anthropic, Gemini, wherever, you're questioning and answering at a higher velocity. And now there's so much ad surface being introduced there, less with Anthropic. But that's where we're saying, like, to marketers that the upper funnel has been disrupted, because now users want to be very specific on their question and have a more tailored set of answers. And that's no longer happening in a search format, but in an LLM format. That measurability makes the attribution funnel more challenging. And I would say this isn't a new theme. What usually happens is a new surface comes out, a new measurable variable comes out. And that's where the data linkage is the biggest value that a cloud provider can bring to the ad tech platforms and or receiving brands.
What did you mean by less with Anthropic? Like that, what ChatGPT has more ad surface area than Anthropic does?
Yeah. Did everyone watch the Super Bowl? I mean, I definitely didn't, but I watched the ads.
Yeah. And there was a OpenAI ad, right?
Yeah, there's an Anthropic one too, but
Anthropic is not willing to buy into the ad inventory space because their focus is on model surveying versus viewed as competitive with other ad platforms. OpenAI alternatively is willing to play in that. Gemini as well has KPIs that are measurable within that interface. And you can see the tech companies evaluating if they're an LLM provider, like how much do they want to be exposed to that level of scrutiny just from a regulation standpoint? Like, do they want to open themselves up to that revenue opportunity? But the risk might be you're sitting with Zuckerberg and Sundar going through the evaluation of how toxic and addictive your platform can become. So do you want to be in the ad space? And Anthropic is openly saying no.
Famously, no regulatory issues at all for Anthropic. They're doing really good. Okay, so you were saying not necessarily that the surface area doesn't exist, but like they have specifically put their position on the table as, yeah, we're not going to mess with ads, which feels like famous last words to me. Sure, dog, whatever you say, until Kimi K3 comes in, eat your lunch. And boy, those ads are looking pretty good.
Why would we ever want money? But what I wouldn't like deter you guys from thinking is like, you look at those ads and you're like, is it just crappy brands that want to spend money on that surface? And the answer is no, because companies as big as like Home Depot, Apple, they're willing to sell gift cards on these ads to have diversified user traffic. Because when you think about the amount of demand they get from their store, their digital, whatever, this is supplementary to them. And that's really meaningful. And so don't view those games as oh, shitty game, like shitty ad. Not the case. Like some of the biggest brands are willing to spend dollars there to have a supplement to their share of wallet, the term I had mentioned earlier, and have full diversification.
I wonder about like the real established brands, right? Like Pepsi. Like they spend so much on these ads, but like I'm still going to order a Diet Coke everywhere I go. I love Pepsi. I watch the Pepsi ads, and I love them. I loved when Brittany was on them. But like, how effective really is it when you're so established that you are a household name and you've been around for generations?
We have really high brand affinity, which is like a modeled metric and not a real number. But yes, those brands do care about those emotional based numbers that maybe third parties put out, like a Nielsen, for example, customer rating. But I would say the ad platforms and or the brands that are very performance focused, which is not a household brand that's super established, They're the ones that are going to care about their data the most. And that's where we have opportunity across what we do and what they're interested in doing is really that high performance. And now there's this new middle ground where brands generate a halo effect, like how you associate with, I think Pepsi had a commercial crisis with Kendall Jenner a few years ago. Like that was a negative effect to their sales. That's a really good example of like major brand, major advertising, like miss the moment. It totally happens, but the effect on sales is felt. And again, the visual of a upper funnel video type ad can have such a negative effect on the bottom of funnel metrics for sales.
But do you feel like for those more established brands like that, the Pepsi example and things like that, that if there is a misstep, as you said, Audrey, that there is such a bigger impact on the bottom line because their user base is so much larger, right? So it's not like a small niche brand that's like, cool, we lost, a few thousand people that have gone over to a competitor's products. We're talking about like hundreds of millions of people that drink the product every day.
Yeah. Well, it's also a really addictive product. Like we're talking about chemical water. Get me wrong, I love a Diet Coke, like Nina's saying, but yeah, it's definitely felt at the bottom line. I think the theme not to miss out is any advertiser that's placing $1 at the top ad networks are using the demand planning on those platforms to see how much money they're going to make in the next year for their forecasting. Like there is such a dependency on dollars in the front door for their media investments. And that's a different responsibility than in the cloud space. Like you're either running your back office or you're running your product services with us, peer, whatever. And I think the faster we can make marketers revenue generators, the faster at Databricks we can make technology a revenue generator as well. That's where you have the most effective conversations within the C-suite. But that requires, and this is my point earlier around like the foundation of the ML platforms for these platforms going back, is the best sales mechanism is understanding your customer's customer. I don't really have to know what each ad platform does. There's nuances. I'll read the developer guide if I'm trying to sell them something and find like a Swiss cheese hole to like plug. But I always say like, I care about your customer because that's how they're making money. And it could be an individual, a group, other companies, who cares? But that's what really puts us in the frame of their own terms and their own business value. And I think that what I notice, and I felt this way at GCP and all cloud sales, were kind of hesitant to find the right business value creation. But if you're not sure where to start, how do you make money is simply answered like, where are your majority of your customers coming from? And like what products and services are they sucking up or not? And that's such an easy like playing field leveling that I think we forget how to do. And I've attended like the business value office hours. I think our tools are directionally so helpful. Take a percentage of total sales, like take credit for that. Like great, we can all do like the general math, but when you're trying to connect with these new execs that, depending on their relationship with us, could be really hot, really cold. All I talk about is the customer's customer, our customer's customer.
Love that. It reminds me of like my enemy's enemy is my friend. Like the customer's customer is what I'm interested in because that's what's ultimately going to get us where we need to be. No, I love that. This has actually been super, super interesting. And probably one of my favorite conversations we've had. We do have the Brick Lounge lightning round that we like to do with all of our guests. So I just want to lead into that unless we have any like closing thoughts real quick we want to touch on.
Nina, you're gassing me up and I'm probably feeling more dry than usual.
No, that was literally like so insightful. I personally had like no experience with the ad tech space except being on the other side of it where I'm like clicking and buying everything.
Yeah, you're our customer's customer. We're not confused.
So I'm going to hit you guys with the questions. These questions are both for Audrey and Randy. So I'll ask the question. Audrey, you go first, and then Randy, you go second. What's a tool or resource you cannot live without? It can be Databricks. It can be non-Databricks. Doesn't matter.
I love Seeking Alpha. I read it. It has quite an expensive buy-in, but it's really good for financial literacy and monitoring, like our publicly traded companies and their privately traded peers.
Love that.
And I'm glad you asked me that. I mean, it's definitely not Databricks. That's for damn sure. I like Raycast, which Databricks did ban internally for no reason. at all. No good reason. And it is the best tool I've ever used for anything. Any other company, I would have quit on principle on the spot. And I didn't this time. But next time someone tries to ban it, I'm for sure quitting. It's the best tool.
All right, next one. Best piece of career advice you've ever received.
Ritualize discomfort.
Ooh, tell us what that means.
The fear of being uncomfortable, I think, can eat you alive. And if you remain, I like to say, I'm delusionally optimistic. I think that's what I fill myself up every morning, because this is it can feel like such an uphill battle, whether if you're in hunting or an established account, like the pressure of the environment can suffocate. But if you don't ritualize being uncomfortable or uncertain as your area of energy, you will lose your oxygen infrastructure to be successful and keep going. So I got that advice from someone that came from nothing and built their career in ad tech. Ritualize it, because it's going to happen everywhere.
A lot of the career advice I've gotten was wrong, because it was probably for the people who were giving it more than it was for me. But I did get really good career advice from Skip Miller, you shouldn't know his name necessarily, but he did training. So career advice or paid for his content, you tell me. But he did tell me personally, only to me, to stop talking about your goddamn product. It's not about the dog. Shut the fuck up. Like, just stop. And talk about a buyer's pain, because they are experts on their pain. And they will not bother to become experts on your product unless you can make it clear how it connects to their pain. And if you jump in with a goddamn slide deck about what my product does, you better really hope that you just happen to guess what their pain was. And you probably did.
So have some compassionate empathy and relate to them, knowing that, I understand what you're going through, and then kind of hit them with the product and why this is going to save them. No?
That's what's so weird. Do not ever talk about your product. I know it sounds insane, because the reason they don't know about your product is not because someone didn't roll up on them and make them. They all know Google. Everybody knows Google. It's just not clear what to Google. The problem is not clear. And if you can help someone understand their problem better, that is so much more valuable than any product you can put in front of them. And if you got a good product, the clarity will lead to them making a purchase decision. If you have a trash one, they will leave. But in both cases, you have provided a lot of value.
And Randy's so honest about it. Like when he meets and does his form of discovery, it's the shape of what the pain looks to them or feels to them. And it's not that we aren't empathizing for them or giving them space to be uncomfortable, but those are the keys to the castle that we're looking for to find.
Last one. And we got a couple minutes, but what is your 1-year prediction for data and AI in the next year? Could be anything.
Know who gave us this? That was so helpful. I actually think it's less than a year. We had one of our execs say, I don't even want a dashboard. I just want to natural language query the question and answer. No more relying on a user to find the right dashboard to set the right filter.
I actually love that. Yeah. Just ask a custom question, show me the graph I'm looking for in that point in time. And yeah.
No, my man's talking no graph.
No graph. I like graphs. I'm a visual person.
I do too. So my first thought was, that sounds like bullshit, dog, but fine. Because you the things if you really want to try that, you're probably going to do a lot of good along the way, like NASA trying to get to the moon. Even if they didn't, we got Velcro and glow in the dark stuff and gravity pens.
And then this customer is also so thoughtful. He talks about the interaction pattern, because I think there's so much AI slop and are you using this one? Are you doing this? Do you have agent? Blah, 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 blah. And it's so low quality, and there's a thoughtfulness on the reception of whatever is put in front of them. And that's a feeling mechanism and a people focus. We can't coach as sellers, but we can observe and appreciate and carry over to others. So I do reference probably those the most. That's probably the best learning I've had from our customers here in the last 6 months.
And Randy, what's your prediction?
It bursts.
It bursts? What does that mean?
Means that's a good fucking question. I don't know what it means, but I think that the multiples stop being sustained. And that's, to me, the most interesting thing to predict. What's actually going to happen? I don't give a shit. I don't know. One's better, one's not. It's going to be self-driving cars. Cool. Is it going to be really good lane keep? Fine. That's fine.
But I do want to thank you guys so much for being on the Brick Lounge. It was such an amazing conversation. We wish you the best and can't wait to see you again. Would love to have you on again.